Alliance. Welcome to this Technology Awareness Roadshow for SMEs, how standards can unlock industrial IoT for SMEs. We still have an issue with the cameras because GoToWebinar does not allow any of the speakers to activate their cameras. We managed at least to be able to share our screens. So we are, for the time being, we are going to continue like this, just sharing the screens. Therefore, we will be able to see see the slides and the presentations from the different speakers. Let me introduce the event itself. This is an event organized mainly by the European Digital SMEs Alliance as a main organizer, but also co-organized by Small Business Standards SBS and ETSI, the European Telecommunication Standards Institute. The purpose of the event is to look into the opportunities in terms of standardization that are offered for SMEs in their digital transition into the use of industrial IoT. You know that for many sectors, for many traditional sectors, IoT is a quite important technology because it will allow essentially several opportunities. We could talk about the securitization of products, but definitely also advantages in the maintenance of devices, in the control and the remote control and so on and so forth. So definitely we believe this is a very important, IoT is a very important component of the digital transition, especially for SMEs. With the estimations nowadays that there should be some 50 billion connected devices by 2025. Of course, the opportunities of these new technologies for SMEs will be endless. And standards are therefore a very important issue at the moment because using IoT requires companies to have commonly understood frameworks that allow them to the devices to talk to other machines, to other devices, and to transfer data. Of course, there are proprietary solutions, proprietary technologies on the market, but we need to make sure that there is interoperability, and we need to make sure that as many SMEs as possible can access this technology. So today we will be talking about we will be discussing with policymakers, with standardizers, and with the SMEs to go through this topic. Of course, one of the most important objectives is to raise the SMEs' awareness of technology standards for the adoption of new technologies for the digital transition. So we want to know also what is the state of the art in terms of these standards for new technologies. And we want to also to present certain solutions developed by SMEs, at least proof of concept of how to use particular standards to adopt IoT technologies. Before we start, let me also just say a few words about the organization, one of the organizations that is co-organizing today, which is SBS, Small Business Standards. It's an organization which receives funding from the European Commission, and through this funding, it is already supporting the participation of more than 50 SME experts in different technical committees and standardization making bodies. Because the objective of SBS is to really promote and better represent, promote the participation, better represent SMEs in standardization. SBS is therefore almost ready to launch their 2021 annual work program, which ideally would include the nomination of new SME experts and many initiatives in the area of standardization for SMEs, so support offered to SMEs that want to participate or want to get represented in standardization. Let me also mention another important initiative which is funded itself by the European Commission, and it has the objective to increase the representation of European stakeholders, especially SMEs and academia, in international ICT standardization. This is called Stand ICT. Stand ICT has already also a quite important budget from the Commission to support the participation of experts, and they have very recently launched a call for experts, which I learned is going to be over on the 4th of January 2021. So the call is out there for those who are interested in applying and ideally getting funding for their participation into standardization. Without further ado, let me introduce the first speakers for the session number 1, which is called European Perspective on IoT and ICT Standardization. First of all, we want to hear from the European Commission. We want to hear what is happening, what is the Commission doing in terms of IoT implementation, especially in SMEs. What are the projects? What are the initiatives? How does the Commission support the adoption of these technologies in the industry, especially in SMEs? I'm very happy to have with us Franck Boissière, who works as policy coordinator in the Commission at the unit at DG CNECT, which deals with precisely the Internet of Things. Therefore, he is really the best person, the person in the best position to tell us a little bit more about what the Commission is doing in this regard. So each of the speakers will have about 10 minutes, and we will have a discussion in the third part of the seminar. So Franck, if you are there, the floor is yours, and we should be able to launch your presentation also shortly.
Good. I see my presentation is on. So first of all, just a small note, there are many more slides than I can really present and get into in the presentation. So keep in mind that most of them are for further reference, so you can go back to them. So let's start with that one. I mean, the importance of standardization seen from the EU policy point of view. It's many things. It's really an instrument for growth and competitiveness. That's what is enabling the European single market to function properly. It does for sure ensure global interoperability of technologies, which is something we're going to discuss today. And it's also something that, if done properly, can ensure strategic autonomy and technological leadership. Next slide. Now, one thing is the Commission is doing a lot of work, and it publishes every year what's called the Digital Economy and Society Index. And in the one we've published this year, it's becoming clear that digital is the way through, and what has been able throughout this COVID crisis to enable more resilience and better recovery from the companies that were affected, and that is very strongly correlated with standardization. So I invite that all the SMEs to actually benchmark themselves, because if it's clear that the industry is embracing the key digital technologies such as cloud and big data analytics, SMEs are not doing so much in that domain, and I think this is embracing standards and getting into that is the way to go. Next slide. So standardization is really a vehicle for many things. I mean, it's supporting the digital single market with a new legislative framework, harmonized standards, presumption of conformity. You all know that much better than I do. but it actually is something that enables us to deliver on policy transition, and it's a way also that allows us to project European interest and values internationally. Next slide. When we have done that, we looked at that in the research environment. We designed our work program and our approach based on platforms, standards, ecosystems, and large-scale experimentation for the last 4 years. Clearly, this has been the foundation of a long journey. Let's go a little bit backwards. If you go to the next slide. We started actually that 5 years ago with this Smart Anything Everywhere initiative that was the beginning of the digitization of European industry strategy, and when we were launching the first concept for digital innovation hubs. And interesting enough that there was this comment from, if you go backwards, sorry, previous slide, this comment from Bruce Sterling that was saying that, I mean, they didn't know where we were going with this initiative, but the name was quite a good one. So if we want to answer to that question, where do we go? Where did we go? Let's try to recap that. Next slide. In the approach we were having, I think, with the digitization and standardization, we've been facing 5 main challenges, which were first articulated and expressed in the context of digital and smart cities. But this is really quite relevant to many more domains to in the IoT sector, in industrial IoT sectors. I would even now add a sixth challenge to that. Seventh challenge, which is really how do we address the cross-sectoral nature of standardization in this concept. This is something that has been going on, building up over the last years. Next slide. So our program has been ongoing for more than 5 years, and it's been gradually building up in terms of investment in research, moving to the first platforms for IoT based digitization, to really what's now the full digitization of European industry strategy, and now we're really getting into market things. Next slide. By doing that, we invested in more and more projects over the years, and each time we actually did so by clustering all these projects together and put them under the umbrella of what we call a coordination action. So this is for you for reference, and I really invite you to dig into this website, because they contain an awful lot of information that can be useful for those who want to get to grips to IoT-based digitization. Next slide. Let me now just focus quickly on the rounds of projects which are ongoing now. And the last wave is actually, what I'm saying now, has been starting this month. Under the umbrella of what's called the EU IoT Coordination Action. I've put the reference to these projects on the right, and on the left we have this Open the Eye. I mean, really, it's really an eye opener for everyone on how the digitization of European industry is going on. And as you can see, they do embrace an awful lot of projects doing very good work in different domains. Why is it important? I think that is, maybe we can go to the next slide, is that these projects are really part of a much bigger movement, which is around these public-private partnerships, or in our case, this alliance on Internet of Things innovation, which is doing a lot of work around standards. And the whole point is to really have a big engagement of actors beyond the research projects and beyond what we can do in one project. Next slide. what we have really want to highlight as a takeaway from this last 5 years of research project is that the importance of use cases in these pilot projects and experimentations is tremendous. And if on top of that we are linking that to standardization, then we are achieving huge momentum. It's not just the projects which are interesting, it's all the ecosystems which are built around them with the help of digital innovation hubs, the platforms that they have been experimenting with, and the reference architectures that they have developed, and from which we are now progressing in developing global standards for reference architectures in various domains. And also very important, and in particular for SMEs, we have these concepts of open calls where quite a significant budget is reserved for SMEs to join this project in the course of their operation, to have a broader engagement from the demand side, the actual users of technologies, and also for being able to onboard new emerging technologies and solutions into existing platforms and applications. This has had a huge impact, allowing hundreds of SMEs to join ongoing projects, and not just to go on the bandwagon, but really get into this digital innovation train, and being embarked in these ecosystems which are being built up. I mean, the time is over where a company has a new technology and they propose this technology with new platforms and a new application, where each time you buy something else in an industrial organization, you have to integrate completely different paradigms. No, these things are over, and I think these with these interoperable platforms, we're now able to onboard new actors. So by investing a little bit in standards from the beginning, you can really get on board huge ecosystem afterwards, things that a single SME would not be able to develop in that domain. Next slide. Now look a little bit in the future. We are developing the Horizon Europe and the Digital Europe program, which will start in the course of next year. We're still on the final drafting stage for the work programs and the orientation. Of course, the budget has to be decided. We expected it to be decided this week, but apparently it will take a bit more time. Nevertheless, we're on good tracks to do a number of things in that domain. And there you can see that there are many activities that we will continue to do so around the concept of digital innovation. Next slide. And if I focus quickly on the Digital Europe program and the testing and experimental facilities, not facilities, there are a number of things which will be important. They will be organized around application-centric reference type for testing artificial intelligence. And all that, again, will be heavily based on standards. I mean, there's no way we can develop this kind of facilities if they are not based on the use of standards for allowing external actors to get on board with those. So next slide, and now getting close to the end. If you want to keep in touch with all these activities, there are many activities which are ongoing in the moment, and we have had tremendous development over the last 6 months. I give you there a bunch of reference to which you can link up and see what happens. So that was normally the end of my presentation, but as of yesterday, I added another slide, next one. And the Data Governance Act that was published yesterday. This, I think, is going to be very important. That's going to be a big challenge for everyone. I mean, no data, no future. I think that's a way we can really summarize it. There are huge benefit for that, and it's important that we do that in a proper way along our values, and put those who are generating data in the driving seat. It's not give out your data to somebody else who will get the benefit out of it. I think it's important to get the right things in the hands of the right people. And one of the bodies that will be created around that to facilitate that is the European Data Innovation Board, which task will be in particular to steer the data governance and prioritize standards development in this domain. So a lot of work for doing that. The next slide, I think, and the last one is is only for reference. It gives you all the reference for this document. So with that sort of concludes my introduction, and I think we can now go on for questions if you want.
Thank you very much, Franck. We just had Franck Boissière from the European Commission. Let me remind everyone, also those who are following us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, that all the slides will be made available on the website digitalsme.eu after the event. So Franck was, thank you very much for this introduction, including the unexpected updates, but very welcome updates on the Data Governance Act. We'll go for the questions later on, but I'd like to go on to the next speaker. Before that, let me just say again that we have a small technical issue, and therefore we cannot unfortunately show our cameras, so we will only be able to show the slides, but nevertheless we can still have, I hope, a good and lively conversation. The next speaker is Olti Xhezo from Vodafone. The reason why we have invited Olti is, first of all, because he's an expert in his company dealing with policies on IoT, and also because in the good spirit, in line with the spirit of standardization, which is, a multi-stakeholder approach, this event is really the demonstration that SMEs, policymakers, larger companies can all work together for the common good. And I believe that the IoT ecosystem is very much a good representation of that, because it's not something that any company can do alone. There is no silo, technological silo. It's something where many companies can work together, whether they are SMEs or larger companies. Of course, Olti's company Vodafone has a big role to play as as a telecom operator, and we know that your company Olti is very keen on demonstrating that IoT is a very important component in Europe's digital transformation. So, Olti, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Sebastiano. It's I hope all of you can hear me well. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today, and thanks for having me. I think you make a very good starting point, which is the importance of joining up all the critical participants in the ecosystem, in the value chain of IoT provisions, that starts from the designing and embedding all those SIMs, or if it's not a cellular technologies, all the modules by other companies, then down to connectivity providers, moving forward to the platform providers, and then the IoT applications providers, and so forth. So it's imperative that we are all joined up in this conversation, transparent, and trying to build an ecosystem that needs the contribution of all of us. On that note, I thank Franck for the opening points, which I find quite relevant also for the messages that I would like to share with the audience today. And I would also like to thank Franck and his team for being quite supportive to all the discussions that we have had in the past months with regards to how we can improve the IoT ecosystem in Europe, because we believe there's a huge potential that can be unlocked for this specific region to make Europe more competitive, in the global scheme, but also to benefit of all the potential behind data and all other elements that IoT can bring into the party, so to say. Now, also Franck rightfully mentioned that standards, which is also the core element of these discussions today, are imperative for us to address, understand, accelerate, and adopt. Reason being, I can speak from my perspective. It might be surprising for some in the audience that when we discuss the IoT ecosystem, you'd see that more than 90% or almost 90% of the IoT devices that are being connected nowadays within those parameters, Sebastiano, that you mentioned, around 50 billions or whatever the projections are across the research, 90% of those devices do not connect through cellular connectivity, which raises a very good point. How can we make all these devices potentially communicate with one another in the near future so that we can benefit across all verticals or industries, all platforms of the synergies that can be generated? Because we know for a fact that if we discuss IoT devices on cellular connectivity, that is quite an established platform of communication. Interoperable standards are in place and so forth. Certainly we have that, but the rest of it, the 90% that might be IoT devices in the smart home context, but smart devices in the low wide area type of propositions. So think of sensors connecting remote agriculture devices, then it's a complete different story. It's something that is emerging, and we need to be at the same pace with this evolution to reap the most of it. So I did a very long intro, but if we move to slide number 1, please. But it was very helpful, the intro that Franck mentioned. So the journey of my slides, and I'll try to keep it crisp, although you will notice in the background that the slides are quite information and data heavy. But what I'll try to do in a snapshot, I'll try to take you across the journey of the discussions that we have with a critical partner of ours, which is SMEs. So there are lots of definitions how you could frame the conversation with SMEs, and most certainly that has become the central tone of the discussions today within Europe. They are the bread and butter of the economy. They are the beating heart of the European economy. They are the biggest employer, I think around 85–90% of employer base across Europe. But as I'd like to specify it, for the ones of us that come from a commercial background, they are the elephant in the room, and no one can sort of escape, but rather solve that problem that we have, the SMEs. Now, certainly we will welcome all the initiatives that the Commission has been undertaking in the past 10 years or so. And Sebastiano, I think we are on the same page when we have been observing the Small Business Act since, I don't know, 10–15 years ago, trying to address SMEs problems. But nevertheless, we understand that now in the COVID moment, trying to address SMEs needs support, and specifically support for digitalization, has become the goal to address. Now, in our conversation with our SMEs partner, and what this slide is trying to show is that IoT, and I'm zooming in specifically in the IoT adoption, is an critical element to enable those SMEs, and speaking from a commercial perspective, to achieve a significant return on investment. Now, you will see in those data provided in there that when we compare the return on investment for SMEs, which are early adopters, and by early adopters of IoT, I mean SMEs that for 3 or more years have had in place IoT solution, there's quite a difference in terms of the return on investment vis-a-vis SMEs that have adopted IoT more recently. And if I was to group the direct benefits of IoT adoption for SMEs, I would certainly emphasize boosting operational activities, creating new revenues, and informing strategies, which will be based on the data. I think that the slides are a bit skewed in there. because of the format, but this is what I'm having in mind where I mentioned that. So in terms of the first point is boosting operational efficiency. The second one is creating new revenue streams. The word is missing in there. And the third one is informing strategies through data. Now, where did we find this data from? We have been building a catalog of conversation with our IoT partners and specifically SMEs in the last couple of years that backdates with our IoT barometer. That's how we used to call it when we used to survey more than 1,000 SMEs across our Europe footprint and try to understand how IoT adoption impacts their business performance and addresses their needs. So there's an indication there on the right-hand side, which is the report that I'm referring to, where we have generated this information, which is the IoT Spotlight report. It has very, very recent data. We published that only 3 or 4 months ago. So I'd welcome everyone to have a look at it, and certainly we can address questions and respond to them. Now, if we move to the next slide, please. Certainly, we couldn't avoid but discussing with our partners the impact of COVID-19 on IoT projects and whether there's still relevance for IoT and its deployment during the health crisis as a start and then moving forward to the recovery crisis and, as we would say, toward the building back better type of situation. Now, we had this conversation with our partners again, and we were surprisingly positive to see that organizations still seem to focus on IoT, and the ones that they do so are coping better during the crisis than the ones that they haven't. Now, certainly, and again, the slide is a bit skewed in there, but I'm looking at my notes now. Certainly, we understand that many projects are being delayed across all our SMEs partners, but what we found out that was pleasing is that still 81% of IoT adopters said that they are prioritizing within their budget IoT, and that they are doing that higher than they did before. And on top of that, 77% of our partners have accelerated the pace of certain IoT projects because of the results that the pandemic has brought over their business. Now, if I was to be more concrete in terms of what IoT projects we have seen as being prioritized and how they address the needs of SMEs in this particular time, I would group them in monitoring operations remotely, for obvious reasons, enabling remote working. Thirdly, discovering new ways of working with IoT devices. And fourthly, understanding in a long strategic term perspective, what are the needs of the new normal that everyone needs to embrace so that we become more resilient. Now, if we move to the next slide, please. Now, this is an extract from another project of ours where, Sebastiano, you may recollect very well that we have had discussions around this topic, and most recently also in an event that we cooperated together. But this is a screenshot of a policy work that we conducted a couple of weeks back, building on a large data set of our conversations with SME partners across our biggest markets in the European footprint. And I'm thinking of Germany, Spain, Italy, UK, and also some southern markets as well, where we have tried to sort of map all the SMEs based on their digital appetite and how they performed in the digital ecosystem and how many tools they are able to explore in that space. And in that graph, you will see that they rank from the lowest in terms of performance and adoption, which are the fadeaways, we like to call them SMEs, which, as the term indicates, they are likely to disappear given all this disruptive situation that has been resolved from the COVID, moving upward where we see the digital dynamos, which, as you may imagine, are the ones that are the easiest to cope, the most agile. They are the ones that have already been navigating the digitalization space, and they consider COVID as an opportunity rather than a risk. Now, I'll be very brief in terms of the policy messages or the understanding of ours from this analysis. But again, I welcome you to go through the document. Is a quite a useful piece of work that has lots of data that can be useful everyone to the ecosystem. But basically what we understood and what we all agree is that there's a need for the government policy support. And when I say government, in brackets, you'd see both at the central, but also at the local level, so at the European Commission, but also at the national governments, to support SMEs by prioritizing all the opportunities presented by the use of digital, and most importantly, addressing the digital divide. And I'll get back to that point. Now, a tailored approach definitely is needed. There's no one size fits all when we discuss SMEs. And if I was to identify top 3 key objectives that all of us together need to address, I would say is availability of digitalization. And behind that, we need to make sure that all SMEs have access to high-speed connectivity. And secondly, I would emphasize capacity, which means that we need to close the connectivity divide between, as a starter, large and small SMEs, but within that, also between different SMEs in different vertical industries, ranging from hospital, tourism, agriculture, retail industry, and so forth. And the third key objectives that we need to address, and this is detailed in more examples in our report, is both capability and capacity, which means that we need to provide a flexible and guided digital investment scheme. And we see very good examples coming from all markets in terms of, for example, digital vouchers, where you could provide financial opportunities to the SMEs so that they can invest in digital capabilities. Now, if we move to the next slide, please. This is a screenshot, which I believe goes at the heart of what's important for SMEs nowadays, which is their commercial performance, how they cope with the crisis, how they become better and more resilient, and certainly digital in the recovery phase. Now, again, what this data is trying to show, and I'm focusing specifically on IoT, which we believe is a critical component to what we call the successful future-ready businesses. So you will see in a comparison mode, if we were to assess early IoT adopters, and again, the threshold is 3 years of having IoT solutions in their business versus 3 years plus, you will see that in all components, those mature IoT adopters are coping better, are performing better, are more efficient in terms of resources budgeting. They make better use of data analytics. They certainly have improved productivity, and absolutely important, they manage to ensure a differentiation, be it in terms of brand or competitiveness. And figures may vary from element to other elements, but certainly it clearly indicates that IoT can make a difference if it is adopted to not only digitize the companies, but also make them resilient for the new normal or the building back better scenario that we're all looking for. Now, if we move to the next slide, please. Now, I think this is a, I'm very, very passionate about this initiative of ours, which is our role in trying to support our partners, because we're in this together. Let me say that. I mean, telco operators have been one of the most resilient businesses, but the value that we see in that is that gives us an opportunity to give a hand to our partners, and certainly SMEs are partners with us, and we're in this together. Now, VHub is a fantastic proposition by one of the components of Vodafone Group, which is Vodafone Business, that deals with our business customers, which is basically a platform where we are able to provide free insight, to provide guidance and support SMEs in a single click, which I all invite you to have a chance and go through it. Now, it addresses mostly questions, concerns, and solutions in 3 key areas, which is With regards to remote working, digital security, and digital enablement, it is being rolled across all our European footprints. Currently, is in only a few markets because it's a very recent initiative that has been.
May I ask you to go quickly to a conclusion, because you took a bit already more than the 10 minutes that were allowed.
Yep. So that will be my last slide. Then in the final slide, there's a plethora of documents that we have been working on, which I invite everyone to have a look at and continue the conversation. Thanks, Sebastiano.
Thank you very much. Sorry for having to try to interrupt you, but indeed your presentation helps us very much continue with the event, because I'm sure we have all understood how much SMEs can benefit from IoT, from your very good presentation. But now we want to move a little bit a step ahead and understand what is out there for SMEs that want to consider adopting IoT, and how they can do it in practice. We will now hear from Enrico Scaroni, which I'm very glad to introduce. Enrico is here, works for Telecom Italia, but is here representing ETSI. And Enrico himself is a long-standing expert in IoT standardization, in particular in the framework of 1M, 2M. So certainly Enrico can give us a very good perspective of what is there in terms of standards in support of adoption of IoT for SMEs, and also perhaps I'm sure you will also explain why you and your company have invested so much in standardization, because standards are not paid by government. Standards are developed by industry, and therefore somebody has to put really money, experts, very good experts like you, to develop those standards. So it is very amazing to see how much there are companies which are investing to create an ecosystem where not just they can thrive, but many more companies, especially SMEs, can thrive. So Enrico, the floor is yours. You'll have 10 minutes. Please try to stick with that, because we are already a little bit beyond schedule.
Thank you, Sebastiano. I will try to stay in the time. Thank you to everybody also for giving me the occasion to talk with you all. Just as in the information, I'm working for Telecom Italia Mobile, but here I'm with multiple hats, because I'm, as Sebastiano said, I'm highly engaged in the standard, especially for ETSI and for its standard initiatives, both 3GPP and 1 and 2M, which I think is the most relevant in this discussion. I try to go quickly. I try to, first of all, to make an observation, which is the following. I hope that it works. Okay. First of all, you remember the forecast. Everyone was thinking that we arrived to very high number very quickly, and all these evaluations were a little bit optimistic, in the sense that all the analysts have foreseen a more quicker development of the IoT market, but in general of the digital market. What's happened? It's a lot of reasons, but I wasn't, let me say that, first of all, for me, is even a bigger promise. I tend to believe that the numbers are much, much higher, even today. Nevertheless, it's really, really below the expectation of the people. So that means that a lot of companies have already benefited of that. Another other companies are struggling to understand what they have to do. And of course, this puts in difficulties both big and smaller companies, honestly speaking. Of course, who is much far from the information technology in general, from the telecommunication, the communication industry has more difficulties than who is inside. That's normal. Now, there are two questions which are for me important. One is when it will become, it satisfies the expectation. I would say that I don't have an answer. If they failed the analyst, I don't think I can perform better than the analyst, because it's not my job. But what I like to underline on the when is the fact that on one side is a very bad thing, because it means that this market is not a reality. On the other side is still a big occasion, because it means that there is, this future is only minimally built. So everyone is his own occasion, and is occasion to arrive in a moment where probably will accelerate. But at the same time, to warn that when it will accelerate, the expectation with that will accelerate very quickly. So it's important to be ready as early as possible. Now, the question that I can provide an answer is, why is it late? That's easier. If you think currently, most of the technology used, most of the services that we are dreaming about were technically feasible some probably 25 years ago, 95, except when you are really requiring big bandwidth for augmented reality and videos application. All the rest was technically feasible. Not at the same price that today, because of course the price of a lot of things, including connectivity, but also the ability of processing and the capacity of memories and processing has really dropped down with respect to making more possible to do it. But it does not happen in any case, not at the speed that was expected. And the answer is, let me say, the short answer is that there is too much fragmentation, and there is a lot of solution locking. So everyone develops his own stuff and try to work around his own ecosystem. Franck before mentioned exactly one of the points, that we need to combine the ecosystem. It's partly part of a, let me say, of a nature of the man's. You should like to stay on a secure side, and you try to develop something which is really, you will try to like to control something. But this needs to be compensated also with a bigger openness to collaboration with the others, especially in IoT. If you notice, first of all, this market is in delay. So you normally the companies which are active get much less than what they can get, exactly because it's not developing at the right speed. And that's one aspect. The other aspect, which is quite interesting for me, is the fact that all this try to defend the position is really try to, and nobody is really, we see that everybody is trying to defend his own ecosystem, but nobody is really capable to benefit of the overall possibility of ecosystem. And we experienced even the company in the past years to drop down some of the IoT solutions, exactly because they are not able to make a business. So it seems that no matter how much big you are, but it's very difficult to make an ecosystem which works. But at the same time, if you mix the ecosystem, you can get a lot, which is exactly the next message that I want to give. So if we pass from some niche verticals and close the ecosystem and try to have some kind of integration of all these things inside some framework, you can share even the ecosystem and you generate much more value in that. Exactly because when you share the ecosystem among one each other, you benefit one another, and you even invent new services because you are able to talk one. And you avoid some distortion, like some happens that sometimes some of the solution create a vassalage of companies around the solution, which is around probably some big player, which is not good in general. Now, these things was identified as a showstopper several years ago. So the standard really activating itself, trying to solve the problem by using the standard. The standard, what is doing? When something is converging on the market, the standard is not needed. When something is late, when something is not arriving, you need a standard to allow everyone to talk one each other. So the task of standardization by means of simplifying the environment, removing unnecessary solution, preserve the investment, which has been already done, because that's also another important part, is to create an ecosystem and reduce the platform and development integration cost and move all the expansion of the services. I'm a telco operator as a company, but at the very end, connectivity is a commodity, and platform services should be a commodity as well. The real work should be on the services, because are the only thing which allow to develop more the business and take even the citizen and the companies to take benefit. Now, I use this last time just to give you some hints here. What give you the use of standards? Be solution independent. If there is a standard, it works across solution. And if it is designed properly. If you can have a benefit of sharing the ecosystem, and if you decide to participate actively, you can even have a possibility to shape the technology future. And if you participate directly or indirectly, you can raise your voice and your needs. And this has very important two effects. First effect is that by participating, you can benefit on network people, that everyone boosts the knowledge and the innovation. So you can really leverage one each other of the work. And if you adopt some standards, you are really sharing the cost of innovation. In telecommunications, and I will mention one and two very quickly in 1 minute, because I don't have much more time than that. One-to-one work, which is one of the one that I'd like to mention later, is the result of hundreds of many years of work. And if you start to design a solution, new solution, you have to reinvest all these things sooner or later. And that's part of the limit. The other thing which is even more important is that you can make your own business model. So the standard allows you to not depend on someone else, especially if it's a small company. There is always the risk of dependence from the business model of someone else, which provides you a solution. You need to be independent to make your own business model. And I leave at application, so I go to the last point. And don't think it is low process. If you leverage on all what is available, it could be very, very quick. Exactly because you leverage on something which already exists. So the basic message, if you can look around and reuse what is available, you get a lot of benefit. And if you reuse what is available in the standard, you can even share ecosystem and share solution which been developed by hundreds and are really open. Last things that I want to do, because I'm late already, is simply this one. Just I left 3 slides about ETSI, which is one of the standard body recognized by the European Commission in Europe, which works essentially in this area. And in particular, I'd like to point your attention to 1 and 2M initiative among the others. GPP is the one on cellular, which is more telco. 1 and 2M is exactly the IoT one, which is global, is open, all the documentation is available. And that is also another sign of openness. The documentation must be available to everybody to read. That's very important. And then you find some information about ETSI, which you see that there are also a big number of SMEs. And after there will be also Emilio, which talks about, we participate to this work, so he can talk much properly as SME of the benefits and the participation. I close here just to say hello to everybody. Thank you for having hear me. And remember that IoT is sharing information. It's not just putting information in a cloud or transmitting the information. If you don't really share the meaning, you don't get the IoT. You are making simply some telecontrol, which is maybe slightly different technically, but it's the same thing that we were doing probably 40 years ago. It's much more than that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enrico. There was many ideas, and I think also very inspiring. look, with that, we move to the next session. So we change a little bit the perspective now. After having heard from the Commission and from people, essentially from telecom operators, from very large companies, we want to hear the live experiences of the real SMEs. And that's why I'm very glad to start with the second session, where we have invited two representatives from companies which are, directly involved in standardization and are directly involved in the implementation of IoT. And the first one that I'm glad to introduce is Emilio Posca from the company Newen, which is a successful company in the telecommunication sector. That is, Newen itself is participating in standardization. They are a member of ETSI, and they are here to demonstrate. Emilio, I'm sure is here to demonstrate what he and his company have benefited from being directly involved in standardization. So, Emilio, the floor is yours. Again, please try to keep as short as possible because we are a bit late in time.
Thank you, Sebastiano. I will try to explain today how standard could facilitate the SME activity. This based, of course, on our experience being an ETSI member. But first of all, let me spend a few words about us. Newen is an SME operating mainly in the energy sector, with particular reference to the telecommunication market. We act like an engineering company. Internally, we identify and design our product, and the production is carried out with external partnership. In telecommunication sector, we mainly operate in access network, and the focus is on transformation, transport, and storage of energy. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. As we see that we operate in telecommunication, and this is a very difficult, dynamic market, always characterized by new services that imply that an SME must be updated technological and to run continuous development just to stay on the edge of the technology. Among the emerging services that there are in ICT or in telecommunication, we have artificial intelligence, IoT, 5G, cybersecurity, blockchain, whatever you want. And these challenges will come just in the next years. No? So facing these topics is not so easy for an SME. What are the major challenges that an SME has to face to stay in this market? First of all, the definition of the product. This implies that you must have a marketing activity to identify future requests. Second point, you have to evaluate the effort in terms of investment and human resources that you have to allocate to do that. Another important point is time to market. You know, a new development requires a time. And our experience is when we decided to start a new development, mainly it will require a couple of years to be present on the market. And last point is that you are forced to harmonize the requests coming from different potential customers because everyone has own peculiarity and so on. Okay, so how the standard can facilitate this challenge? Next slide, please. First of all, I think the standard are a good starting point, no? Especially if you participate in the definition of the standard. This means that you have to join a technical committee. And let me start for the first point that I mentioned before. What the market will require in a medium term, okay? So, if you are in a technical committee, the market trends normally emerging during the discussion and allow you to identify what kind of product you have to realize for the future telecommunication market. Moreover, the comparison with the other competitor make possible to identify the sector where you have more possibility of success. Please consider that an SME is a small enterprise, of course. There is not so many effort that you can devote to this activity, and means that you must identify a niche where you can stay, can grant you a success. Another point interesting is that during the discussion, the performance and the characteristic of the product that will be required by the market are agreed and so accepted also by the major player, and consider also a part of your design already done, because at least at high level you define the feature of your product. Another point is time to market. As I mentioned before, we need to start as soon as possible our development in order to be present on the market when the market will need your solution. Staying in a technical committee, it's possible for you to start your project on the basis of not consolidated specification. I mean, you have access to a not public document that are in draft, and this is a significant advantage in terms of development. And another point is that following the standard, you avoid to enter in wrong path, losing time and effort. And a last point is related to the company, to the SME itself. Is the growth of your SME. If you participate in a standard group, for sure you increase your personal relationship, and it makes possible to propose your solution to companies that would be difficult to address for an SME. Once more, the comparison with the big player is an advantage, but I have to consider also that an SME doesn't have a dedicated structure like the big player says. So you must focus on the really interesting sector in order to optimize your effort and resources. Moreover, if you become a member like we are of ETSI, this represents for sure an advantage for the company in terms of competence and reliability when you are on the market. And if you declare that your product comply with the standard, for sure this facilitates your company to enter in the market to realize new business. Next slide, please. What we obtained as ETSI. We joined ETSI in 2018, so are 3 years that we are present there. We are active in technical committees, that is environmental energy. And in 2 years, let me say, we got 3 different typology of result. The first one is that we realized a product, result applying this product were very positive, and now are reported in official documents. This for sure facilitates your position with new customer. Second, we decided to design a device starting from not official documents, and this device has been realized and commercialized since the beginning of 2020. And the last point is that the architecture that we proposed jointly with Telecom Italia, it was an architecture to distribute energy to 5G small cell, now is reported in a standard. So just to conclude, what is my suggestion? Standard represent for sure an objective advantage. So my suggestion is join the standard, focus your participation, be active in a working group, and for sure the result will come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emilio. There was quite a good testimonial, because this is not just saying that in theory it's good for SMEs to participate in standardization. It is really, you're giving the proof, because your company has benefited so much just because you are a member in ETSI and you participate directly in a working group. Now let me move also to the next person which we have on the line as a speaker, because I'm quite curious to what he will tell us. The next person, because we will have a concrete example of what it is to use the IoT in one particular industrial sector, which is the lifts sector. So Marco Cogliati, he's himself very much involved in this industry, because he represents a company, Tre-e SRL, which is part of a consortium of a larger consortium of lift sector companies, and they are trying to implement IoT technology for many lift companies, lift SMEs in particular. So they are really on top of a concrete vertical implementation of IoT, and they are doing this on the basis of standards, in particular 1M, 2M. So this is very, very promising, because we are talking about a market where there are potentially thousands of SMEs, of independent small companies that have or maintain lifts, and therefore what Marco is trying to do is extremely promising, not just in my opinion for his particular sector, but for many more sectors where we could do similar things. So I'm quite interested in what Marco will present today, and I'm happy to give you the floor, Marco.
Thank you, Sebastiano. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I thank the organizer for inviting me to this roadshow for my first roadshow. I will try to share my experience with you in this sector. A little story for myself. I have been working in the elevator sector for 25 years, and in particular, I project elevation system. I actively participate in national and the European standardization. I am an FSME and SBS expert, and as such, I participate in the Smart M2M Technical Committee of ETSI. I have been working for years for the Tre-e Consortium. Tre-e Consortium is a company that groups 20 small and medium enterprises in Italy, and we manage in total about 35,000 elevators. In recent years, I have dedicated myself to the study and research of IoT system for the elevator sector. The consortium strongly believes that digitalization in our sector can be a great help to all members of the consortium. This is why in Tre-e, a work team has been created, which includes experts in various sectors, who have been working on this IoT project for some years with the aim of making it available and applicable for our members. There have been and still are many problems to solve. One of the difficult in the development of this project is that the elevator has a very extensive series of variants. For example, manufactured model type complies with the different regulation, different technology, and so and so. So not a single product, but a series of different objects to apply a system that can guarantee a connection and exchange of data. The first POC, POC, proof of concept, developed in 2019 and based on the very high-level hardware and software providers, but did not give the desired result. That is, the main problem was not technical, but economic. It was not economically sustainable for our market. In the October in 2019, as an FSME SBS expert, I had the opportunity to participate in the drafting of the ETSI Smart Lift technical report. My contribution was contained, and together Mr. Tribaudino, expert of FSME, and Mr. Vannetti, expert of SBS, we helped the participant of the working table to close the part related to use cases. With this document, however, we have started a more in-depth study, which will materialize in a few months' time into technical specification, but which immediately gave us the opportunity to work in parallel with the second pilot project using the parameters that we codified in the ETSI document. This made it possible to create an IoT project for Smart Lift based on the 1M2M platform, which incorporates all the data defined in the technical specification. Starting from the ETSI report, it was easier to approach the problem. Proceeding in the study and drafting of the document, we have seen that the road we are going down is in line with what we had set out to do, namely the creation of IoT system for elevators that can be approached in different way with different devices and with any type of elevator equipped with a communication system. Now I'd like to try to tell you more about this experience. The first slide, lift prior to the IoT not always are technologically advanced system, and this obviously depends on the years of the installation. When they communicate this lift, when communicate, in many cases, they do directly with the lift company by sending message either via SMS or mail. The company once received the message, forward it to the technician who goes to the plant to try to solve the problem or the problems. This is, of course, a summary of this project. Please, slide 2. The new elevators called Smart Lift. Smart Lift are machines that have in or around them devices that can communicate. They generally have a control panel equipped with a communication system, and then they can have a number of 30 parts systems. For example, heat sensor, vibration sensors, water or seismic sensor, and so, that collect and exchange data. Slide 3. This is, in my mind, the Smart Lift IoT system. It provides that the elevator can communicate directly with the technician, sending in real-time data on the state of operation or failure. And then can receive and exchange information with the user himself, then receive calls from smartphone, for example. And these types of approach have developed a lot with the advent of COVID-19. in the last through a gateway, it also collect information for 30 parts system, and on the sensory side that is sent to the company and the IoT platform. The IoT platform stores, process, and returns the data for all connected elevators. In addition, the most important thing is that it can connect, if desired, and exchange data with adjacent systems, then create interoperability between multiple parties, between multiple sectors, and if is desired, around the world. Slide 4. Okay, this is obviously the pilot project, and in the pilot project developed to date returns data to dashboard configuring according to the necessary need. I can have visibility of all the plants with the relative efficiency. I can see the location by region. I can get into to the merits of the individual plant, saying the basic characteristics, how many times is stopped in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, and the reason why it stopped. I can check how many races it has done, in which direction, what is the most frequented floor, etc., etc. I can check if the maintenance visit have been made and when they have been carried out. If I want, I can create a custom dashboard. This is more important for the interoperability of the system. For example, I create a custom dashboard for a hospital or for the rail station, or I can send the main data of my elevator to allow to verify only the operation in industrial file, for example. As you can imagine, the interoperability of the IoT system opened the door to generation of new services, and that is definitely a first advantage, maybe the biggest. If we then talk about the real and tangible advantages that enterprise that adopted this system can have, they are, for example, an optimization of intervention times of technician, but above all an elevator of the efficiency of the intervention itself. If we link IoT development to artificial intelligence, we can talking about preventive and predictive maintenance. And here, a word opens up related to efficiency, starting from the warehouse, personal, the growth of the plants assigned to a single maintenance, and so and so. I personally believe that IoT system will become an integral part of our life. Many already are. If we look at the projection of the growth and expansion of IoT connected objects, we immediately understand what will happen in the future. This is a technological evolution, and I believe that we cannot do without it. In the past, in the lift market sector has already undergone a radical transformation. In 1995, when with the entry into force of the first life directive, the new lift, the machine room-less lift, were marketed. They radically changed the sector. SMEs suffered a major setback for a decade until they reorganized and managed to find a product within their reach, free from patents, that could compete with that of big companies. as they say, history teaches. I hope that SMEs can quickly adopt the IoT system so as not to fall into the...
Ho detto le cose che sapevo. Adesso c'è mezz'ora di...
Emilio, maybe you should mute yourself, and Rosanna, perhaps you can mute those who are not speakers. Marco, you can finish your presentation.
I finish it.
Ah, great. Okay, so
now
very good.
I hope the SMEs can quickly adopt IoT system so as not to fall into the same mistake as before.
Excellent. Marco, I do really appreciate your intervention today, because, you know, at the end of the day, you are the one who's really coming from the market. You mentioned in the beginning that the consortium you work for, you know, is managing something like 35,000 lifts. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the consortium itself is made by thousands of SMEs, and you're only working in Italy at the moment. So this is only a national experience. So if we think about scaling this up at the EU level, the numbers will really be huge. And I also believe, you know, the lift sector, the elevator sector, is quite interesting in this particular case because of the dynamics of the sector. I mean, we all know, you know, the sector is made of 4 big multinational companies, which, by the way, have been fined in the past for making a huge cartel among the 4 of them. And this is history. But then there are, you know, several thousands of SMEs. And as you said, indeed, there are proprietary solutions. So the multinational companies, they have IoT solutions. Whereas, you know, as long as there is no common interoperability, a common framework, the SMEs were unable actually to provide IoT solutions for their lifts. And your ambition is to make that solution available to thousands and thousands of SMEs. And this is exactly what, in my opinion, is a materialization of, you know, the political dream, even of this Commission von der Leyen, to really digitize European industry, to transform European industry, to make it more competitive, to make it future-proof. And at the same time, obviously, also creating a lot of environmental advantages, making these machines more efficient and reducing their emissions. So if I go back to what Franck from the Commission said in the beginning, he was really keen on finding standardization-based use cases. So Franck, the first question perhaps is for you. What do you think about what you heard today, in particular with this last presentation? Are we talking about a concrete use case of IoT in SMEs, and is there a lot of potential for these and for other similar cases?
Well, yes, there are. And I think it's interesting to see concrete example of such developments. Now, in the list of projects that I've sent, in particular the ones which are just starting now, there are few of them which are related to the last presentation in a certain sense. One which is more related to, it's no longer lifts, but it's EV lifting equipment for ports and industrial setups. But the starting point is the same. The starting point is related a bit to what was presented, yet they go one step further. And I think the point is to see how, by starting this way, you can really get into a wider ecosystem, because of course, some of the challenges will be how to use and exploit this kind of data. It's fine for the manufacturer to monitor a number of lifts, to do the maintenance, and so on and so forth. But the actual customers also in the places where they are being used might have an interest to monitor that, if they need to know where they are, what's happening, and if there are some faults that they can handle, or in case just of emergency issues and security where they may need to do that. So I think the challenge is really to go the next step and opening up these ecosystems to third parties in a way that's understandable, and that's exactly what the Data Governance Act of yesterday was preparing. There's also another case which is relating on the building information management, because these actual lifts will be integrated into buildings, and there are many more connected things in these buildings than the lifts. And in the end, the building management company will need to manage all these kind of things. So the challenge is really how to get these things integrated together. And again, all of that, no standards, no integration, or everything at a huge cost. So standards is the way to go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you make a good point to connect it with the Data Governance Act, because it's really about how this data are then used and transferred to create more innovative services and so on. Even for the lifts case, but I think Marco, if I'm not wrong, you mentioned the use of AI, for instance, no? And I'm sure if you do that as an additional service, you will work with other companies, other partners in the ecosystem to make that happen. So, do you think there is the possibility, Marco, to basically for your own consortium to transfer the data to other companies that will offer additional services, and therefore have even better serve even better your clients with additional services like artificial intelligence, for instance?
Yeah, Sebastiano, I think that the base for this system, for IoT system, is to have a platform. We use 1M2M platform because inside this platform there are more things. The aspect of artificial intelligence, in reality, we try to develop this aspect, but now we check the IoT platform in this moment is under checked, because first of all the platform must be okay, must be ready to start to develop another system, and then AI.
Yeah. Let me remind everyone in the webinar that we have now opened the panel for discussion with the speakers. So those who are in the webinar are obviously invited to ask questions or to make comments. Those who are following us via YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook can also ask questions using the comment function in the social media. While we wait for any questions from the audience, let me go to the speakers, and let me ask perhaps Enrico Scaroni from Telecom Italia, also representing ETSI here. I'm sure you have been working closely with the lifts companies represented here by Marco to help them, first of all, developing the standard, but also after how to make that happen in real life. So what do you think are the barriers that you think are now there for SMEs to really implement IoT in their companies, provided that there are standards available?
Okay, let me grab 1 minute to make a couple of observations on the previous talks, which I think are relevant, and go in the direction of what you are asking. We found particularly interesting this because we mention it as a use case. It's more a use case. Now it's going to be a standard, so it's not a regular use case. It's something that is going to exist as a specification, and that would be readable by anyone who would like to adopt it. And what we are really doing is to make some work with the FSME and the consortium represented by Marco here, as trying to make it a proof of concept to tune the standard, but also to let the SME participating to experience the use of the standard, because that's the other part which is important. Now, coming to your questions, on one side you have something which has been a result of big synergies. 1&2M exists because a lot of companies work on that, but also because there is a standard body which is highly supported by the European Commission, which is ETSI. There is an experience of this company because what we face now with IoT, so the combination of different contexts in the telco was experienced in the 90s, in the 80s. So that's why probably we see this interoperability as very important issue before probably even the analysts. And it's also the result of some, Franck, remember that we call it oil from the European Commission, which helps some financing and research project, which has allowed to develop several activities inside ETSI, but also with the autonomous initiative like SAREF, which can be hosted by ETSI, but was highly pushed by the European Commission. So all these synergies now have found a synthesis, which provides essentially a tool, but also methodology and an environment where you can do this kind of development of standard and then make it relatively quickly becoming a reality on the market. Now, what is the limit? It's exactly this part that I mentioned. The kind of experience that has been, let's say, developed by all the participants of the standards is not easy to be digested necessarily from an SME, and doesn't mean that they have all the resources for doing that. That's, first of all, there are two aspects. One, knowing that the standards exist and that standard can be used and what you can do. Second thing, knows what are your ability, intrinsic ability on doing IoT. It was correct what was said by Ocean, our Vodafone colleague, let me say, as an operator. There is not something that fits all. So some people knows how to develop things, some other people doesn't have any idea, some other people need have a significant development capacity. So sometimes you have to rely on your own abilities, and like Emilio showed, is perfect. He relies strongly on their own capacity as Newen of innovation. Some other cases you have to focalize on your product and use the experience of someone else. Some other cases you develop your own experience. In this case of Lift was quite interesting because I tend to think that most of us SME work in the Lift, they don't have the resources and the time to dedicate to that, but through a consortium they can do it. And we found a very nice sparring partner, let me say, like in boxing. In fact, that we can compensate and we can integrate the knowledge of the two sides and develop relatively quickly due to that. So first, the final answer to your question is, the first thing is assess yourself in terms of knowledge and capacity and choose the approach which is more suitable for you based on what are your business expectations. It's difficult, it's not easy, but that's the only way in which you can really, I say, well, if you just listen someone tell you what you have to do, or you follow the mainstreams, you will simply adopt the business case of someone else and not your one. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Very good, Enrico. Indeed, let me ask also the panelists if anyone feels like reacting, just let me know, and feel free to take the floor. But going back perhaps to Franck, the question for you would be, for me, having heard all these, what do you think is available at the Commission, in particular in terms of funding, perhaps also considering the funding that will become available through the very big recovery package that has been announced? What do you think will be the opportunities for SMEs that want to invest in this type of technological developments like IoT and perhaps even using standards as in these cases?
Well, plenty. Let's start by, there are 3 or 4 opportunities, very concrete opportunities. The first one, I mentioned the open calls, and I think that's a good way to get on board if you know a bit in which broader ecosystem you want to get in. And the last projects which are running will all have open calls running, and that will be a great opportunity for joining on board. In this support action, in particular the OpenDI action, there's two important things which are essential. First of all, is the compilation of use cases and key performance indicators, because this basically tells you what you want to do and where you want to go, and they are being used to show what works, what doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's not a good use case that benefits a lot from digitization, or because integration is not done with the right standards. But there are plenty of information. Second thing is, in the recovery fund, there will be plenty of opportunities, and that will depend very much also on the national and regional authorities. Where I am at the moment, they are preparing something which I found extremely interesting. Is there are countries where you have new renewal incentive for changing old cars for new cars, and they are doing the same for changing equipments in industry. So that allows industries to equip themselves with new digital technologies, and in particular, these are opportunities for SMEs in the manufacturing sector to use or to provide technology for this operation. So again, there will be plenty of opportunities.
Oh, thank you, Franck. The last one you mentioned is something that is being decided at the national level, correct? Or is it something that the Commission will be able to sort of indicate to the countries as something they have to do?
I suppose, the dynamic of all that is still a bit new, but I suppose there will be interaction. But the first shot at the making a proposal is at the national level.
Yeah, because maybe this is a bit deviating, but some of us who come from particular countries, and there are many Italians in this event, we share certainly the concern that certain governments may not be that much up to speed with regard to digital transformation, so they may not really understand what kind of investment they have to do with the recovery package. So, you know, I think that as much guidance they receive from the Commission, the more guidance they receive from the Commission, the better, because we see sometimes that this money can be spent, at least I've seen this money can be spent in all sorts of ways, and sometimes this is not really, this is a bit far from the digitalization priority. But that's probably more of a personal impression from myself. Let me ask the other speakers if you have any comment on what you heard especially from the second session. Let me start with Olti. You heard two companies, two SMEs who have demonstrated their concrete activities, either participating in standardization or using IoT. Does this ring a bell to you? Is this confirm does this confirm the impressions and the studies that Vodafone has been doing, or have you heard anything, you know, different and perhaps innovative compared to what you knew already?
Thanks, Sebastiano, and thanks everyone. I think it was a very insightful and comprehensive discussion. I'm pleased to hear that more or less at the high level what we have been discussing with our partners seems to resonate with the discussion in here today. Perhaps I would add one point that might be quite an update and relevant for the discussion, complementing the input that Franck gave with regards to the Data Act, is that I think that this morning as well, the Parliament adopted the report on the industrial strategy, if I'm not wrong, where we happily see that industrial IoT now features there as one of the critical components that should drive the European digital agenda. Now, if you'd allow me perhaps a 2-minute reflection, maybe I'd like to bring into the table another element which is quite critical to the industrial digital agenda, which is the critical binom between digital and green. And I think IoT has a key role to play in this transition. Now, certainly industrial IoT and smart lifts is a fantastic example, is one of the use cases that help us deliver not only digital, but also reach the green ambitions. And if we go back to the funding discussion, we know that in the recovery package, there's a percentile of, I think, 37% of the funding should go towards solutions that accelerate green. So it's quite important, both in terms of funding, but also of opportunities behind to have this discussion. But I'm thinking also of smart energy meters, for example, which enable businesses, municipal authorities, households to reduce their energy use. So, for example, I think we have across our platform maybe 12 million smart meters, which, if I'm not wrong with the numbers here, that will save an estimate of 1.6 million tons of carbon emission. And then in the smart cities, they network intelligently, they improve efficiency of energy intensive services such as public transport. I'm thinking of public road network, street lighting. So I'm thinking of another example. I think we have one city in Spain, Guadalajara, where we ran a pilot project and we installed like 14,000 LED lights to a central management system using IoT solution, and then the energy consumption was seen to drop by 60, 65 or 68%. And then there's smart agriculture, where you basically deploying IoT solution. We have data that shows that, for example, you can save up to 50% of the water being used for irrigation, which otherwise would have gone wasted. And then we help to make more efficient the global food production, which otherwise 25% of it would have gone lost. So if I was to sum up, and there are plenty of other examples that I could mention, but I'm sure that we don't have time for that. I think that the timing is critical, but it's the challenge now for us is in execution, if I was to put it like that. It strongly demands partnership between government, industry, consumers, what we mentioned as imperative in terms of the value chain. We as connectivity providers, we have a critical role to play in connecting all these components. There are the digital applications there that can drive consumer empowerment and make a change in the value chain. But most importantly, and the last comment from me is data behind it. We need to make sure that this data is being used properly, and we need to have a holistic approach to data, from each generation to processing to storage, and then making the most of it, be through IoT, through AI, and so forth. They are the central piece of getting this efficiency and IoT ecosystem together and delivering what is the ambitious target of a digital and green transition of Europe.
Thank you very much. Let me before we try to wrap up, because we are moving very quickly towards the end of the panel, unfortunately. Let me give the floor to one of the persons in the webinar, Stefano De Pamphilis from OpenDEI project, who signaled that he had raised hand to say that he had a question. So if Rosanna can open his mic, maybe Stefano can directly ask his question to the speakers. Is that possible, Rosanna, or shall I read out?
Yes,
loud?
I think I did. I think
Okay.
my mic is on. Can you hear me?
Yes, Stefano, welcome. So please feel free to shoot your question, and maybe you can quickly introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. First, yes, I am Stefano De Pamphilis. I am working in the OpenDEI project that has been nicely mentioned and described by Franck, so I will not describe more. And I am the CEO of the Fiber Foundation. So first of all, let me thank you, Sebastiano, and the team for this great event. It was really very inspiring and interesting. The speakers, thank you for the speakers for a very nice presentation. My question is exactly because we are conducting a study like this inside OpenDEI, is mostly for the SMEs. So I understood that they enjoyed very much the participation, not only in the standardization body, but also, of course, of the adoption of the standards. So my question is after the adoption of 1M2M in their products, if they think or they have already explored other standards, both in ETSI or outside ETSI, this doesn't matter, but in general, if they also suggest this to the other SMEs that may be present in this workshop. Thank you.
Is it, Stefano, is it a question specific to 1M2M or to
no, to the adopters, to I think Emilio Posca and Marco Cogliati.
Okay,
if they,
maybe
after using 1M2M, they find this useful, of course, because they really this useful and this is great. If they explore other standards, they want to maybe use other standards in their products or in future products.
Okay, maybe I start with Emilio, even though I'm not sure you have adopted yourself 1M2M, but you're certainly using other standards.
No, we didn't adopt M2M, to be honest, but I can speak about different standards. As I said, we are inside the technical committee, environmental engineering, and so we are mainly use these standards, but these standards face one problem that will be present in future, that is how to feed, for example, I said something before, the small cell of 5G. No, up to now, 5G is only realized using the present tower, no? But if you increase the frequency and so on, you have to install a lot of small devices. And this is a problem in general that we have to face, how to feed these devices around this. About IoT, normally you have no problem. If you think to the metering, you are able to feed in some way. If you are thinking to the gas metering, you have IoT inside, but you can feed via battery and so on. But one problem that we are facing is when you spread out a lot of devices around and you have to provide, let me say, energy to there, you have to use different solution. For sure, we will not have the key solution. We will have a lot of solution around, but one of solution that we are thinking about is how to feed remotely this thousand or billion of devices. This is something that in this technical committee we are working around, and some solutions are proposed. I don't know if I answer to your question, but just to give you an idea how can a different side of the problem.
Yes, I want to go to also to another question because time is really running. There was also a question from Daniele Tumietto. Daniele, maybe if Rosanna can open his mic, he can ask the question briefly, Daniele, because we are really closing.
Okay, thank you, Sebastiano. Well, thank you all. It's very interesting, the discussion. I want to know if you have received or given instruction to impart IoT solutions to your counterparts. And if so, have you used internal as corporate parameters or standard, or international standard like ISO and similar? Thank you.
To who are you asking this question, Daniele?
If you want, I can try to answer.
Is in general, because is for a big company, is for their supply chain, and the small company are a supplier of big company. Is all both of the point of view. Thank you.
Very good, Daniel. I see that I heard that Enrico was already trying to give you an answer, so I think that solves the issue. Enrico.
Yes, the question in reality has a short answer, which says essentially that the short answer is there are a lot of solutions. Some of them are even standard de jure, some other are standard de facto, but in any case, the big part of the IoT market is made by proprietary solution. And proprietary solution, I don't mean even the big IoT, which names comes more frequently, because if you look at this market, I tend to believe that even the bigger one do not control them 0.something%, because all the solutions that you have in field now are mainly basic by proprietary solution. And let's arrive to the other observation, which is if you look at the main problem is to keep all these things together. Every player, every standard is trying to build an ecosystem around itself. That's why when we design one-to-one, we try to build something different, which is not a standard which is designed to work with himself, but a standard which is designed to allow the exchange between the ecosystems. So try to standardize what is needed to allow the other standards to talk with each other. And this is at the level of exchange of data, but also at the level of exchange of information. Now, it's not only, let me say, is probably not the only solution which try to go in that direction, but currently probably is the only standard de jure which goes in that direction. At least I'm not aware of other standards de jure going in that direction. Then there is a big integration because the work of one-to-one was done with a big exchange of work with IoT, talk with ISO, talk with W3C. So trying to correlate a little bit the work which are going there and trying to put them together into a framework of interworking. Is a attempt which goes outside the proprietary solution which are made by consortium or by specific solution which are not standard de jure, but at least try to talk with the major player. ITUT is a relevant player, ISO is another relevant player, W3C as a representative of internet work in the area of interworking is an important player. So at least this one have tried to talk together. Then there is still a plethora of solutions which are, let me say, not so open and not so focalized to interworking, which is basically very legitimate in the sense that try to focalize on the short-term business. But at the very end, the experience shows that nobody can build an ecosystem by itself, even the biggest one. So sooner or later, you have to talk with the others. And it happens, I try to finish in 30 seconds, sorry, I was a little bit Sebastiano. It happens very often that even big consortium, I don't want to mention, but very big consortium goes to these players, ITUT, 1 and 2N, W3C, exactly to find a way to talk with the other. Because elsewhere the ecosystem, it doesn't flourish enough to keep the business up. I don't want to mention one thing. Even the biggest domotics service in the world with more clients has been closed by the player who have generated it, which is not a good sign, because even a big player is not able to maintain it open, have to change and try to develop more because it's not able to make a business. Means that you have to combine the ecosystem if you want to make business, especially on the consumer market is more sensible, but there is the industry is more focalized. But the problem remains the same. Thank you.
I see that you go back to your previous point, Enrico, that we need to, fragmentation is the biggest issue at the moment. Anyhow, with this, let me give, before we close, I wanted to ask the speakers to give me a last 30-second statement of your impressions or things that you have not been able to say until now. So your last chance to pass your message or to make your own conclusions. Let me start with the order of the agenda. Let me start with Franck Boissière from the European Commission. Franck.
I think there are plenty of interesting ideas that emerged. Two things. The next frontier is not just yourself, but the broader ecosystem based on data. And by experience, if you don't start with standards, you will have to come to it if things are working. So better do the investment first.
Thank you, Franck. Let me go to Olti. I don't hear you all.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. No if I was to wrap up, my reflection is that in order for SMEs to reap all the IoT benefits, they need to rethink and revitalize and review their business processes and the way they work and become digital by design. Only then they will be able to become a future-ready business, and certainly the reward behind such digitalization is worth the effort.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Very clear, Olti. Enrico, what's your last words? Because you have already spoken a lot.
I've spoken a lot, so I will limit to say that I strongly support what Olsen said. You need to rethink your process and your business. Thank you.
Great. I think there is agreement on that, at least from the telecom operators. What about Emilio? Emilio, what's your last words?
If you wanted to have a clear vision of the future for your SME, I think that the standard and the standard can help a lot to you. In the technical group, you can see a lot of new ideas, a lot of new possibilities. So the suggestion is always the same. Please join a technical group and work inside.
Great, thank you. That's well understood, I hope. And last but not least, Marco.
For me, using a standard also favors the interoperability of system, and this in the IoT world is very, very, very important. And it was an interesting exchange of information in this roadshow, and I thank all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. Thank you very much, all the speakers. With this, I think we can conclude our Technology Awareness Roadshow of today by the Digital SME Alliance, together with SBS and ETSI. Let me thank also all the people who participated in the webinar and those who followed us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We will shortly make available on digitalsme.eu a sum up of the event, including you will be able to access the video recording of the event for those who want to share it. We will also share all the presentations together with some ideas of the shared conclusions that you just heard. I think this only leaves us the door open for much more work to be done in the area of standardization, and especially adoption of the standards among the SMEs. There is a very wide community out there, and there is a lot to do in terms of helping them adopt the right standards and be able to digitize and perhaps also rethink their own business model, as you heard from some of the speakers. So thank you very much from myself. Looking forward to the next opportunity. Goodbye.